you mentioned, or I mentioned in the bio that you're an aspiring interventional radiologist. So what is that whole thing about?
Weird. It was weird because I felt like I was unlocking a new part of my brain.
Do you see any significance or anything particular about being a black male pursuing this field of medicine?
You stand out. You definitely stand out. We're a scarce. Ask yourself a question. Ask yourself like that's what I do. I'll be like, why not? When it gets tough, why not? Or when you don't want to do something, do it because you don't want to do it. Do it because of it. Or even if it's something.
Hey, my name is James Charpentier, and welcome to Less Than 3%, where we talk about healthcare, my journey to becoming a physician, and really anything from the perspective of a black male pursuing medicine. And in this episode, I'm really excited because I have a great interview that I think a lot of you guys are going to enjoy. And before I get into it, let me also say, make sure if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, hit notifications. Definitely share this with anyone that you think might enjoy it. And if you're listening on any other platforms, make sure to keep following the podcast because God willing, we'll have a lot of great new episodes coming. Now, let me go ahead and introduce who I have for this conversation today. So the guest for today, is a current first-year medical student at the CUNY School of Medicine. He holds a BS degree in biomedical sciences. He has done research at Columbia in transplant immunology. He's an aspiring interventional radiologist, and he's a current CME question writer. And for this episode, I'm happy to introduce Obinna Aguwuncha.
Hello everyone. Thank you for having me, James. I look forward to this.
Yeah, no problem. So I know I give a bit of an introduction. Do you mind giving everyone listening an introduction for yourself?
Okay, well, as you know, my name is Obinna Aguwuncha, and if you couldn't tell from the name, I'm from Nigeria, but I wasn't born there. I was born in Brooklyn, Canarsie, where I grew up, and, I have two sisters. Yeah. I went to the Science and Medicine Middle School and went to Midwood High School, where they cultivated my love for science and my curiosity.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And so one thing I definitely want to get into is, as you gave a little bit of a glimpse up there, some of your background and how you kind of grew up, how would you say, so hearing about those things and then seeing where you're at now in terms of being a current medical student, you hold a bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences, you've done a lot of stuff, you're doing things on the side. How would you say, or what would you say were the things that really drew you to ultimately pursue medicine as a field? What ultimately inspired you to really go down the path you're currently on?
I would say my environment definitely inspired me. From young, I went to, I said before, the Science and Medicine Middle School, and they had us wearing lab coats in middle school, as little kids, and we had to really take care of our lab coat, go to classes with our lab coat, and we would get reprimanded if we didn't have our lab coat with us. They were strict, but that really instilled the thought of medicine in our minds from a young age, and they took us to trips where we saw hospitals, went to Cornell, and trips like that. So I would say since you are a product of your environment, I'd say that helped me. Well, that was the first stepping stone towards medicine. I'd say also my mom being a nurse played a role as well, because her stories of the hospital, her stories in the hospital, really instilled a sense of curiosity in me, because I would hear about crazy things happening, especially with babies, because that's what she did. She helped deliver the babies and would take care of them after their birth. And she would tell me about the ectopic hearts that she saw, or hypoplasia that she would see. And it was kind of wild to me. It didn't seem real. So I wanted to know what she was talking about, and that. Yeah.
That's a lot right there for sure. Seeing number one, the academic aspects of it, where you had that background around you and you had those things to kind of foster your interest. And then on the other side of things, also, your mother and the influence of your mother and someone close to you showing you kind of a glimpse into that medical field, and then that kind of producing that sort of interest for you. So, going from, the background that you were talking about and kind of getting to this point, obviously there's a lot you've had to accomplish, there's a lot you had to go through and overcome, and what would you say are probably some of the most important things that you feel like you've gotten on your journey as a first-year medical student now?
I'd say the most important thing that's changed over time would be my mindset, because before I would always have like the end goal in mind. I would think, okay, I have to do this to become a doctor. I have to do this. Like, I have to get this done. I have to pass this test. I have to get these grades. But like now, I've tried to instill gratitude into like my daily life, being grateful. Like, this is something that we get to do.
Yeah.
Like, we have the opportunity to do it, and it's a blessing. So that's really changed my mindset and like how I approach all this hard work that we have to do. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's definitely a key point there, because it's like the one common thing I think you're always going to see across a lot of medical students is like that discipline aspect.
Yeah.
And like building that discipline to be able to sit down and, you know, do what you got to get done and ultimately have the end goal in mind. But I think what you're saying there is key as well, because a lot of times when you're trying to like get all the way, you know, to that end goal, and you're kind of sprinting as opposed to maybe taking the day at a time or taking moments to be grateful of where you're at right now. I think a lot of times that can, you know, often probably contribute to burnout, you know, and things like that, and then kind of hold you from getting to those goals in the end.
It adds to like it goes hand in hand with enjoying the process.
Yeah.
Because we're only gonna be this age once. Like once we start practicing, we're gonna be older, probably start a family. Like, we have to like enjoy these years and like really soak it all in. Like, that's what I try to tell some people sometimes. Like, I know a lot of people are caught up in the future. They're like, oh, what's gonna happen the next time, or like a month from now, 6 months from now, next year. But like, we should definitely invest time in the present moment, because that's the only tangible thing we have. Like, right now, this is what we can actually like feel and touch, the present moment. So yeah, that's something that I just try to keep myself and like ground myself in.
I see. Yeah, I think that's getting into again, just like being focused on like those daily tasks that you're doing along the way, because if you get like too caught up, like, I think it's good to have like long-term aspirations and goals, of course, but it's like if you're only focused on just like hyper getting to that goal, but you're not putting the effort in day by day, which is
like
funny
now, like what you're doing now, like in this time.
Because like if you don't, because one thing I try to think about more is like the things that I'm studying, where a lot of times like I want to be prepared well for like the exam that's coming up, and I want to know this information code and everything, but it's also like a major reason that I need to know this, and I've been kind of realizing more lately is that like all these little details that I'm trying to get down are ultimately going to be things that could be like the difference between life and death for a patient that I have. You know, like it's things that I want to get down so that I can help each of my individual patients like the best of my ability that I can. So it's like I can't afford to kind of like skip steps or focus too much on like getting there, but I also got to make sure like I know the stuff I'm doing, you know, like I know.
Because this is like, these are lives in your hand, And I think about that too sometimes. I'm like, okay, I'll be studying something. I'm like, oh, that's not important. But like, no, it is. It's very important. It could be life-changing information that, like, if it was like my son or daughter, I would want the physician taking care of them to know it like straight, like know everything there is to know about it, that condition that they're suffering from. So knowing every single bit of information is key. It's key.
So going off of kind of that point, like you mentioned the thing on the discipline, you know, studying all of that, and then also being able to really know material well and everything. Obviously, these are all things that a lot of people might know is crucial to medical students and, you know, surviving through medical school. Kind of going off of that point, I've asked this, I think, a couple of times on the podcast so far to a couple of medical students, and I definitely want to ask you this. So, like, I think for a lot of people, they recognize just how difficult and just how much effort goes into like medical school, you know, and just how much dedication, studying, hard work, all that stuff. And so I think a lot of people, I think there's some, like I feel like I always see on one end maybe people really, maybe being like, not afraid, that wouldn't be the right word, but I think maybe people having like certain negative outlooks on med school, being like very, very, very intimidated by it. And then on the other end, maybe on like the content creation side, you might have people that like, this is how I study, you know, 12, 18 hours a day. And like everything is
so
very,
they put it out
you know,
there like, oh, this is tough. Like they scare people in a way.
Maybe. I think there could be some of that. But I think kind of what I'm getting at with this question is, do you feel like med school, and obviously it's only your first year so far, but from what you've learned to this point, do you feel like med school is as like miserable, or maybe not even miserable, but do you feel like it's as difficult or as bad as people say?
It depends on the person. It depends on the person, because you have to know yourself. That's one thing about med school. You have to know how you study, what works for you. And it definitely depends, because some people have a different threshold for information. Like,
Interesting.
and that threshold can be based on mindset, like how you view it. Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and like you're not different from anyone else. Like they can do it. If like that's how I look at it. Like the upper years have done it, so why can't I do it? Like what's so different? Are our brains like that different? Like anything is possible. That's my quote that I tell myself very often. Like if you put your mind to it, you can do anything. So the mindset definitely plays a role. So I'd say, to answer your question like shortly, it's not as hard if you really want it. Like if you really want something, you can get it. So yeah, I wouldn't like deter anyone from pursuing medicine based on the difficulty, because it's not impossible. It's not impossible. That's what I'd say. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. You can anyone could do it. If you're,
I think that's a pretty good take, because it's like you're getting at how I think a lot of people probably feel like it takes a special type of person, and maybe to some extent, you know, I think that's
what people think. But it really
at the same time,
it doesn't take that special. Like people have done it,
and we'll continue to do it.
What's different? Yeah, exactly. Like why can't you? Why can't anyone do it?
I see. So it's kind of like that motivation aspect you're getting at too.
Like why not? Why not see if you could like. People, that's why I encourage people to get curious, because like you don't know people. There's an untapped potential in a lot of people, like that they just haven't. They need that special push, that special environment to bring out of them.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting point there. So let's see. So I know we talked about a lot. I know we talked a lot about like the difficulties of medical school, and kind of like overcoming that sort of thing. So I'm gonna switch it to a positive note soon, but I do have this question. If you were to change like one thing about medical school from what you've seen so far, what do you think that would probably be, or if there is any?
Okay. No, there's always room for change. There's always room for improvement. You know, I'd say timeline, because the thing about medicine is that it's very test heavy, very like board exam heavy, and it makes sense because you want to make sure you know your stuff. But the timeline can be very condensed. Like you made this analogy earlier.
Yeah.
You know, like taking a sip of water from a fire hose. That's what it is. And like for a lot of people, it might force them to like cram information rather than understand it. But like the thing is, you don't have to like memorize something if you understand it. If you deeply understand something, like you understand, oh, if I turn that light on, this room is going to, I can turn that light on.
No, it's all good.
Like understanding of something, you don't have to like memorize like, like so there's some things that you do have to memorize, like random numbers. But like if you understand the context behind those numbers, it's easier to like keep in your head rather than memorizing something cold. Like with like, let's say for example, flashcards. Some people, they'll like memorize the flashcard, like they'll read like the first two letters or first two lines, and like.
All right, so we're back. We just had a lot of technical difficulties, so we're just gonna go ahead and do this from here. So we're gonna have to close this up pretty soon, but that's some things I want to ask you about. So you mentioned, or I mentioned in the bio, that you're an aspiring interventional radiologist. So what is that whole thing about?
Well, I'm not gonna lie, going into medicine, I wasn't sure about specialties that I was interested in, but in my undergrad year, one of my friends had a friend whose mom was a radiologist, and she was looking for students to help her out with the materials that she was making, like lectures and like questions for those doing their CME, like they needed credits. So I took the opportunity, because that's one thing about me, like if there's an opportunity, I'm gonna take it. So like as I was making the materials for her, like it was weird because like I felt like I was unlocking a new part of my brain, like looking at the x-rays and the MRIs, and like I had to like really orient myself and like visualize the human body from that perspective. And I just found myself getting like immersed into it. Like I would do her work for like hours on end and like not even realize time was going by. Like it would be 2 a.m. This was during break. So like during break I was like banging out all the lectures for her. I'm just like, whoa, this is pretty calm. I could see myself doing it. And then like cool. I was also interested in like surgery. Like I originally wanted to do plastic surgery to what's it called? Help people who had like severe burns.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But then like I realized that you can combine surgery and imaging. and like you can do like life-saving surgeries quickly, and like with little to no post-operative effects.
Yeah. No, that's a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah.
You know, that even kind of I have to say, intervention is definitely one of the more interesting specialties to me. So I can definitely see how like that resonates with you a lot.
And
for sure.
and it's like minimally invasive. So like just do a
little catheter.
And they don't have like a huge scar that they have to like recover from.
Yeah. No, that's huge. Yeah, and that's probably more towards what the future of medicine is looking like too.
But like the thing is that I'm not too set on it. Like I'm keeping myself open, of course, because things change, and like I might get another opportunity to do something else. Yeah. So like I'm not gonna be like, oh no, I want to do this. Like I'm definitely open. Yeah. Yeah. Because I feel like when you have everything planned out to like the T, it makes things boring. Like there's no uncertainty. There's no, openness. Yeah. So I'm definitely keeping myself open. Yeah. Yeah.
No, for sure. Yeah. That's definitely really cool. That's something I probably have to talk about a little bit more on the podcast in terms of specialties. Start to talk about those topics. So before we close, a couple last things I want to ask you. So first, so I know one thing. I mean, we're both black men, in medicine and in a field where there isn't necessarily like a ton of black men that are necessarily like involved in medicine in white coats as physicians. But so along that, I did want to ask you, do you see any significance or anything particular about being a black male pursuing this field of medicine? And if so, like what particularly about that?
I'd say that you stand out. You definitely stand out. Like we're a scarce piece of medicine. Like you said, less than 3%, right? Yeah. No. Well, I would just say we are scarce. We're not that prominent in medicine. So like I feel like with that being said, we have to like definitely like set a good example. Like people always generalize. So we definitely have to like I feel like it's a intrinsic thing for us to want to do our best because of that. Like we want to show like, this is what we're capable of, because they don't know, or like they just have their generalizations based on like what the media shows them.
I think that's an interesting aspect and an angle of that to consider, and I think it's maybe something I'd want to think about a little bit more, because I think there is an aspect of like, obviously there's always going to be like certain biases, and there can even be like certain stereotypes towards people like black men like ourselves. And I think when you have a field that, number one, often has a lot of prestige attached to it, and then you have a field that has so much that goes into it, and there's so much hierarchy a lot of the times and things like that, I think sometimes we do have to be mindful that there can be certain stereotypes and there can be certain biases that kind of perpetuate in some of these areas. And I think kind of as black men coming into a field like that, it almost feels like you're saying like, or it seems like you're saying that it feels like there's almost a higher sort of standard that you gotta like hold yourself to make sure. Like
you, it comes from within though. Yeah, like the other people don't hold you to that standard.
Interesting. Like
they're just like, I feel like you're just paid more attention to it because you stand out.
I see.
Yeah. Like internally, you want to do your best.
Yeah. I see. Yeah. No, that's an interesting point for sure. Yeah.
And like I want to say, like that's the thing. We need more black physicians. Like if the goal of healthcare is to provide equal care to all, then we need more black physicians. Like we need more people of like different races.
Yeah.
To provide that equitable care. Because like we understand, like there are things in the black community that like black people understand, and like because we have that understanding, we can care for a black patient probably
like
better
likelihood.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
In that way, and the patients probably feel more comfortable with a black physician, so they might divulge more information
and a lot
that could benefit their health.
Yeah, so it's kind of, you're kind of getting at like that physician-patient connection relationship that's there, which I would definitely say is definitely crucial when it comes to your patient outcomes there. Not only just handing the medication or that sort of thing, but also like the actual
like interaction.
Yeah, and the actual you hearing and recognizing the patient
and the trust that you form. Yeah,
and that's gonna make ultimately a difference when it comes to your patient outcomes. Yeah. So last thing I want to ask you, real quick before we get out of here. So, what would you say, seeing that you've gotten to this point, although early in your medical journey still, almost at the end of your first year of medical school, of course, congrats.
Thank you.
What advice would you want to leave to either some students that maybe pre-meds or maybe are starting medical school, and them, in terms of them now like going along that path?
There's a lot of advice that can be given, but I would say keep asking questions. And I say that because it's very broad. It's super broad. Like, ask yourself a question. Ask yourself, like that's what I do. I'll be like, why not? When it gets tough, like, why not? Or like when you don't want to do something, like, do it because you don't want to do it. Do it because of that. Or even if it's something like really, really tough, like even like taking a cold shower, like that's something minor that I'll do. Like I'm like, yo, I really don't want to do it, but I'll do it just because I said I don't want to do it.
And building that discipline.
It trains your mind in a way.
Yep.
So if you think like the goal is too far, pursue it. Like some guy said a quote. He was like, "Oh, make a goal to make $1 million, not for the money, but for what it will make of you."
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's
So
an interesting quote.
just keep asking questions, stay curious, and I feel like knowledge is just a never-ending pit. Like there's always more. So yeah, just stay curious. That would just be my
No, that's good. Definitely.
my advice. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, thanks for coming on the podcast. That was a great conversation. We had to stick through a lot of technical difficulties, so I appreciate you sticking it out. Get this conversation done. I definitely hope anyone listening that you guys really got a lot out of this. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next one.
All right.